My best friend betrayed me with my girlfriend in our home. 5 years later, she comes begging because she discovered I have a son. But Matthew raised him as his own, and now I'm suing for custody. I'm 34 years old. I work in digital marketing, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened in the last few months has been so surreal that sometimes I wake up thinking I dreamed it all. 5 years ago, when I was 29, my life literally exploded into pieces, and I thought I had already been through the worst, that I had already hit rock bottom and was rebuilding my life. But it turns out the universe had other plans. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything went to shit with Vanessa and Matthew. I lived with Matthew since college. I mean, the guy was my best friend, my brother practically. We shared an apartment in the city, one of those typical two-bedroom places where dishes pile up in the sink and nobody knows who bought the last roll of toilet paper. Vanessa and I had been together for like 2 years at that point, maybe a little more, and I was like truly in love, thinking about the future with her. You know, those things you think about when you believe you found the right person. She spent a lot of time at the apartment, obviously, because Matthew was my best friend and the three of us were close. We'd hang out together, watch movies, cook, all very normal and comfortable. I was working a lot back then, had a demanding job that kept me away from home for many hours, but I never thought that was a problem because I completely trusted both of them. And then came that day, the day that basically changed everything. Patrick, a mutual friend from the group, sent me a screenshot. I was at the office. I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday, one of those normal days where you're thinking about what you're going to have for dinner and whether you should go to the gym after work, and suddenly you get a message that destroys your life in 2 seconds. The screenshot was of a conversation between Vanessa and one of her friends, and basically she was telling in explicit detail what she was doing with Matthew when I wasn't around. It wasn't recent either. The conversation made it clear this had been going on for months, literal months. And there I was, like an idiot, not knowing anything. Patrick wrote me something like, "Bro, I thought you should know this. I'm so sorry," and I just stared at my phone screen, unable to process what I was reading. I left work immediately. I don't even remember what excuse I gave my boss. I just grabbed my stuff and left. The drive home was horrible. The whole time I was thinking, it can't be true. There has to be a mistake. Maybe it's photoshopped or something, but deep down I knew it was real. I got to the apartment and heard noises coming from Matthew's room. I just opened the door, didn't even knock, and there they both were. I'm not going to go into graphic details because it still makes my stomach turn to remember it. But yeah, I found them together, in the act. Vanessa screamed. Matthew froze, and I just remember standing there like an idiot for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. What came out of my mouth was like, "You have 1 hour to get all your stuff out of my apartment," and then I just closed the door and went to my room to pack my own things because I couldn't be there one more second. Vanessa tried to talk to me, obviously. She was banging on my door, crying and saying things like, "Please let me explain. It was a mistake. It doesn't mean anything." All those cliché phrases people say when they get caught doing something unforgivable. Matthew didn't even have the courage to come talk to me directly. I just heard him leave the apartment quickly. I threw the essentials into a suitcase. My important documents, my laptop, clothes for several days, and went to a hotel that same night. The following days were a total blur. I went back to the apartment when I knew they wouldn't be there to get the rest of my stuff. Changed my phone number, blocked Vanessa and Matthew on absolutely everything, and basically cut contact with the entire friend group because I couldn't trust anyone after that. I didn't know who else knew, who had been watching me look like an idiot this whole time. A month later, I moved back to my home state, like 6 hours away. I quit my job, looked for something new there, started completely from scratch. I deleted all my social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything, because I didn't want to know anything about those people or have them know anything about me. It was hard. Honestly, like the first 6 months were horrible. I felt betrayed in a way I can't even describe. Not just by Vanessa, but also by Matthew, my best friend of years, the guy I had shared so many important things with. But eventually I started to heal, got a decent job at a marketing agency, found a small but comfortable apartment, started making new friends, people who had nothing to do with my previous life. And then I met Hannah. It was like 3 years after the whole disaster with Vanessa and Matthew. I met her at a work meeting. She worked for a client company, and we connected immediately. Hannah is amazing. Seriously. She's smart, funny, emotionally stable, everything I needed after the chaos I had lived through. And we started dating. Things progressed naturally, and like 8 months ago, I proposed to her. She said yes, obviously. And I was like happier than I had been in years, feeling like I had finally left all that shit from the past behind and could build something good and real. Hannah wanted us to have social media together because she likes that kind of thing, sharing photos of our trips and special moments, and I already felt healed enough to have an Instagram profile again. So I created a new account, uploaded some photos, and one of the first was our engagement photo, both of us smiling with the ring visible, the whole typical happy couple thing. We tagged some friends and family, and basically it was super cute and normal. 2 days later, the messages from Vanessa started. First, it was a direct message on Instagram, something like, "Benjamin, I need to talk to you urgently. It's important. Please don't block me." I blocked her immediately. Didn't even respond. Then she started creating fake profiles to contact me, accounts with no profile picture with random names, and when I blocked one another would appear. She also tried to contact Hannah, sent her messages saying she needed to talk to me about something critical. Hannah asked me who she was. I told her the summarized version of what had happened 5 years earlier, and she completely supported me in keeping Vanessa blocked and out of our lives. But Vanessa wouldn't give up. After like 2 weeks of this, my sister Emily called me. Emily lives in another state and wasn't very involved in all the original drama, so we didn't have much regular contact. But that day she called me, and her voice sounded weird, like serious and worried. She told me, "Benjamin, Vanessa contacted me, and I need you to sit down because what I'm going to tell you is heavy." I was like, "What the hell does Vanessa want now?" And Emily took a deep breath and said, "She says you have a son, a 5-year-old boy who is yours, and she never told you." I went quiet, literally didn't know what to say. My brain wasn't processing the words. Emily continued explaining that Vanessa had sent her a long message telling the whole story, that she had gotten pregnant right before I discovered them, that when everything exploded and I disappeared, she decided not to tell me anything, that Matthew had been raising the boy as if he were his for these 5 years, but apparently Matthew is sterile and they could never have more children, so they went to the doctor and discovered he can't have biological children, which meant the boy had to be mine. Vanessa was desperate because Matthew wanted to get a vasectomy reversal or something like that. Discovered it was impossible because he was never fertile to begin with, and that's when they realized the 5-year-old boy they had been raising was biologically mine. I was like, this can't be real. It has to be a lie, some kind of manipulation. I told Emily I wasn't going to fall for any of Vanessa's games, that she was probably making all this up to get back into my life because she saw I was happy and engaged. I hung up the phone and talked to Hannah. She also thought it sounded like manipulation, but she told me maybe we should at least investigate to be sure. I didn't want to. Honestly, I didn't want to have any kind of contact with Vanessa again, but the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could have a son out there that I didn't know about started eating at my head. I hired a lawyer, a good one specialized in family law. I explained the whole situation, and he told me the best thing was to handle everything through legal channels, that he would take care of contacting Vanessa and asking for proof of what she was saying. I didn't want her to think she could manipulate me directly. I needed to maintain distance and do everything professionally. My lawyer sent her a formal letter demanding evidence of the child's existence and requesting a paternity test if he really existed. Vanessa responded quickly. Her lawyer sent photos of the boy. When I saw those photos, man, it was like getting punched in the stomach. The boy looked exactly. And when I say exactly, I mean exactly like me when I was that age. I have photos from my childhood, and it was like seeing a clone of myself. The same eyes, the same face shape, even the same slightly crooked smile that I have. Hannah was with me when I opened the envelope with the photos, and she also was like, "Wow, that kid is identical to you." I agreed to the paternity test. It was a whole legal process coordinated through the lawyers. We had to go to a certified lab. The whole official thing. The weeks of waiting were absolute torture. I couldn't concentrate on anything, wasn't sleeping well, kept turning everything over. In my head, what if he was my son? What was I going to do? How was I going to handle this? How would it affect my relationship with Hannah? What did it mean for the boy who had been raised thinking Matthew was his father? The results came back and confirmed with 99.9% certainty that I was the biological father. I had a 5-year-old son named Daniel, who I had never met, who didn't know I existed, who had been living with Vanessa and Matthew all this time. I sat in my lawyer's office reading the report and didn't know whether to cry, scream, or break something. I felt so much rage toward Vanessa for hiding this from me, for stealing 5 years of my son's life from me, 5 years I was never going to get back. I also felt confusion and fear because how the hell was I going to be a father to a 5-year-old boy who already had a whole established life without me? My lawyer explained my options. Basically, now that paternity was confirmed, I had legal rights as the biological father. I could fight for shared custody, for visitation time. I had to pay child support, obviously. But I also had the right to be in my son's life, if I wanted. I told my lawyer yes, that I wanted to be in Daniel's life, that this wasn't the child's fault and he deserved to know his biological father. What followed was basically a legal war. Matthew, through Vanessa's lawyer, argued that he was the real father in all the ways that mattered, that he had been there from day one, that he had changed diapers and gone to medical appointments and spent sleepless nights when Daniel was sick. Technically, he was right about all that, but that didn't change the fact that I was the biological father and that they had lied to me and hidden my son for 5 years. My lawyer presented strong arguments about my right to know and have a relationship with my biological son, especially considering I had never voluntarily given up that right, but rather had been denied it through deception. We had to meet in person, Vanessa, Matthew, me, and our respective lawyers. It was in a conference room in an office building, all very formal and tense. I hadn't seen Vanessa or Matthew in 5 years, and seeing them sitting there together made my stomach turn. Vanessa looked older, tired, and tried to make eye contact with me several times, but I just looked at my lawyer, or the documents in front of me. Matthew was quiet, arms crossed, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Vanessa's initial proposal was that I could see Daniel in a limited and secret way, like once or twice a month, without telling him who I really was, just introducing myself as a family friend or something. They also wanted all of this kept private, without involving family or friends. Basically, they wanted me to be a ghost in my own son's life, someone who appeared occasionally, but without any real presence or recognition. I said absolutely not, that if they were going to accept me being part of Daniel's life, then it had to be in a real and honest way. That the boy deserved to know the truth eventually in an age-appropriate way, and that I wasn't going to be a mysterious stranger who appeared and disappeared without explanation. The negotiations were horrible, full of accusations and emotions. Vanessa at one point started crying, saying this was going to confuse Daniel, that it was going to damage him psychologically, that Matthew was his father and everything that mattered. I told her that if she was so worried about Daniel's psychological well-being, maybe she shouldn't have lied to me for 5 years about his existence. Matthew got tense and said something like, I had no idea what it was like to be a father, that changing diapers and showing up for photos wasn't the same as being there every day. I responded that I would have loved to be there every day if someone had given me the option, but they decided to steal that opportunity from me. After that meeting, Matthew called me directly on my phone. I don't know how he got my number, probably from some legal record. He asked me to please reconsider all this, to think about Daniel, that he was just a 5-year-old boy who didn't understand any of this situation. He told me that if I really cared about Daniel's well-being, I should leave him alone, let him continue his normal life without all this confusion. I told him I understood this was difficult for everyone, but I also had rights, and more importantly, Daniel had the right to know his biological father. Matthew got angry. Told me I was only doing this out of ego, out of wounded pride, that I didn't really care about Daniel but only about making their lives impossible. I hung up the call. I was shaking with rage. The following months were exhausting, full of legal back and forth, court dates, mediations, psychological evaluations. We had to see a family psychologist who evaluated the situation and gave recommendations on how to introduce my presence in Daniel's life gradually and healthily. The psychologist basically said, yes, the situation was complicated, but denying a child the opportunity to know his biological father could also have negative long-term consequences, especially if Daniel discovered the truth later and felt betrayed by all the adults in his life. Finally, we reached an agreement. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I would have supervised visits initially, twice a month, in a neutral place like a park or community center. Initially, they wouldn't tell Daniel who I was, just that I was someone who wanted to meet him. But over time, as we built a relationship, there would be age-appropriate conversations about the situation. They also agreed that I would pay child support, obviously, and that eventually, if the visits went well, we could work toward a more regular visitation schedule and eventually maybe full weekends or things like that. The first meeting with Daniel was like 2 months ago. It was at a park near where they live. There was a visit supervisor there, a nice woman who worked with family services. Vanessa and Matthew brought Daniel and then went to wait in the car to give us space. I was super nervous, like my hands were sweating and I didn't know what to say. Daniel is a cute kid, super energetic, with that same slightly crooked smile I have. He approached shyly at first, and I crouched down to his level and said, "Hi, Daniel. My name is Benjamin. Nice to meet you." He said hi very quietly, and then asked me if I knew how to play soccer, because he had brought a ball. We played soccer for like half an hour. He told me about his favorite team and about his kindergarten teacher, typical 5-year-old kid stuff. It was surreal. Being there with this boy who was half mine but who was completely a stranger to me. Every so often I'd look at him and see my features, the shape of his ears, how he furrowed his brow when he was concentrating, and my chest would hurt thinking about all the lost time. At the end of the visit, when Vanessa and Matthew came back to pick him up, Daniel waved goodbye and asked me, "Are you coming back?" And I told him yes, that we'd see each other soon. I've had several visits since then. Every 2 weeks as we agreed, each time feels a little more natural. Daniel is opening up more to me, tells me more things, asks more questions. They still haven't told him the complete truth about who I am. That's going to come later according to what the psychologists recommend. But for now, I'm building a relationship with him. I'm there. I'm present. Hannah has been incredibly understanding about all this. She understands this is a complicated situation I never sought but have to handle. We've talked about how Daniel will eventually be part of our lives. Maybe he'll come to our wedding next year, maybe spend some weekends with us when it's appropriate. The relationship with Vanessa and Matthew is cold, obviously. We communicate only through text messages about visit logistics. We keep everything polite but distant. I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive them for what they did, for the original betrayal 5 years ago, and then for hiding my son from me all this time. But I'm trying not to let that resentment contaminate my relationship with Daniel, because he's not to blame for any of this. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about everything I missed. Daniel's first steps, his first words, his first day of school, 5 complete years of moments I'm never going to get back. It hurts in a way that's hard to explain. It's a mix of sadness and rage and frustration. But I also try to focus on the future, on the fact that I still have a chance to be in Daniel's life, to build a relationship with him, to be his father somehow, even if it's not in the traditional way. Last week, Daniel asked me if I liked dinosaurs because he's obsessed with them. I told him yes, and then he spent the next 20 minutes explaining the difference between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Velociraptor with an enthusiasm that made me genuinely smile for the first time in months. When the visit ended and he ran off to where Vanessa was waiting for him, he turned around and yelled at me, "Next time I'm going to teach you about the Triceratops." And I told him, I'd love that, and I guess that's enough for now. Small moments like that, building something little by little with this boy who is mine but who I'm still getting to know.